Today I'm with Julian Lesser, the member for Berowra, who is my leader too. Thank you, Julian, for your time.
It's wonderful to be here with such a distinguished constituent as Rajesh. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your article in Australian in response to an earlier column by Brian. Do you think the columnist has a poor knowledge of India independence and struggle and Kashmir issue?
Look, thank you for the question, Rajesh, and thanks for being here. I was very disturbed by the Brian Toohey article because I think it indicates a position on the extreme political left in our country that questions the relationship with India and seeks to put India and China on the same page, and I think that that's just completely wrong. India shares so many of Australia's values, and it's the reason why Australia and India are working more closely together in broader strategic fora, and I just felt that Brian Toohey's article couldn't go unanswered. And I particularly wanted to focus on the things that we have in common. And I think the things that we have most in common are those institutional things, the fact that we are both robust democracies. Australia is the 6th oldest continuous democracy in the world. In the same period of time that India has been independent, I think India's had 14 prime ministers. I think we've had 17 rather. We've had a few more in recent years, unfortunately. India has, those 14 prime ministers come from 7 different political parties. Our prime ministers come from 3 different political parties. We both have an independent judiciary. We both have the rule of law. The judiciary from time to time strikes down laws both of our countries don't like. And we both have a vibrant press. I mean, if you read any of the Indian newspapers, you'll see very vociferous criticism of the government, as you will see criticism of our government here. And to, in some respect, compare Australia and India to China, where you've had one party running the show, where there's so-called elections, where there's no freedom of speech, where there's no freedom of the press, and where, as you're seeing in Hong Kong at the moment, dissent is being cracked down on an unprecedented level, I thought was just wrong. And that's why I responded to Brian Toohey in the strong fashion that I did.
In your column, you have mentioned a strong relationship between Australia and India will be a major foreign policy legacy for ScoMo. Can you please elaborate?
Look, I think one of the things that Australia and India are doing at the moment is that we're both on a similar trajectory internationally. We are both, as nations, playing a greater and more robust role in international affairs, and that's because of the state of the world at the moment. You're having an America that is not quite as engaged as it's been in the past, and you're having a much more aggressive China seeking to assert its influence in the Indo-Pacific region. In that context, in particular, Australia has to look to countries that share our values. There's been a lot of talk over many years that Australia and India should come together, that we should work more closely together, that we should have greater trade, that we should work more closely in defence and security matters. And I think Scott Morrison has well and truly realised that this is the moment, in the same way that I think Narendra Modi has realised that this is the moment to do that. And so I think there's been a lot of talk about a closer relationship, but I think under the Morrison Prime Ministership, this will actually materialise. And we've seen it materialise and take its first major step in the comprehensive strategic partnership that was announced in the recent Virtual Leaders Summit that occurred earlier this month. And that's important because it really elevates the relationship that we have with India to the first rank level of relationship. The fact that we've sent Barry O'Farrell there, the first parliamentarian or former parliamentarian, first state premier ever to be our High Commissioner, indicates the seriousness with which we take the relationship. It puts it on the same level as Washington, as London, as Tokyo. The fact that India has sent such a senior diplomat in Gitesh Sharma, the former Secretary West, indicates that India also regards the relationship very seriously. The fact that we are now doing military exercises with India that we're only doing with a handful of other nations really indicates the strengthening of this relationship. Australia is a resources superpower, India is a technology superpower. We have so many complementary things to work together, and I think under Scott Morrison's leadership we are really capitalising on this particular moment.
Again, going back to your article, I recall a statement, Australia and India believe might is not right. How important is peace to Indo-Pacific for both India and Australia?
this is exactly right. Australia and India both believe might is not right. This means that we believe in the rules-based international order. It means that when you sign up to an international agreement, you're actually bound by it, and you'll do things to not just sign the piece of paper, but to actually see it implemented. That you want peace, security, stability. That when you're conducting loans and development, whether it's infrastructure or financial transactions with developing countries, that you're doing so in a way that helps ensure the development of that country, but not saddling that particular country, we think particularly of some of our nations in the Pacific, with unsustainable debt that it will never be able to repay, and so that the lender of the money effectively has the country by the short and curlies, instead of actually trying to foster development that benefits all. When we say might is not right, it means that we together, unlike other countries, need to work together to ensure stability in our region. Stability is absolutely vital for the economic growth of India and Australia, but it's also vital for the growth of our whole region. And instability, where countries that have different strategic objectives are coming to muscle in on the Indo-Pacific, create an environment that's not just bad for Australia and India, but that's bad for all the countries in the Indo-Pacific and in the Asia-Pacific region more broadly.
India is a new frontline nuclear power, both in terms of energy and defense, while Australia, both politically and socially, is overwhelmingly opposed to any form of nuclear power. How does this massive difference in ideology between both the countries square with mutual economic trade and defense cooperation?
I don't think it's such a difference. One of the first bills I spoke on when I was first elected to the Parliament in 2016 was the bill to secure the export of uranium to India for peaceful purposes. I was very proud to speak on that bill. I've always seen the export of uranium to India as absolutely vital to our relationship. It indicates that we are serious about the relationship, and indicates that India, as its development takes place, as it brings millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, that it will require more electricity needs, and Australia needs to play a part, and particularly in an environment where people are concerned about emissions, nuclear power should be part of that. In relation to nuclear weapons, well, India has a different geostrategic environment in which it's operating to Australia. On India's borders are both Pakistan and China, both of which are hostile neighbours. China has nuclear weapons. I can't remember whether Pakistan does or doesn't, but India needs to be able to defend itself in a different way to the way Australia does. So it's not our business to lecture India about nuclear weapons. We have relationships with the United States and Britain that go back century, and they are both nuclear powers as well, and that doesn't affect Australia's relationship with either of those nations, and it shouldn't affect Australia's relationship with India either.
The recent agreement between Australia and India to use each other's bases, do you think this is the first step for countering China's expansion ambitions?
I think the Mutual Logistics Agreement, which is an agreement that effectively means that Australian defence personnel can refuel and repair and do work on Indian defence equipment and vice versa, and we can share knowledge and do exercises together, is a great thing. And this isn't just about the relationship with China, it's about the relationship of our two countries marching forward together. And I think that that's absolutely vital to the future of our region, but it's also vital to the security of the world more broadly. The nations that share values should march together. One of the things I've tried to do since I've been a Member of Parliament is actually to remind people of the long history of India and Australia marching together in time of war. This goes back to the First World War, when more than a dozen Indians served in the Australian, the AIF, which was the Australian forces in World War I. In World War II, we again fought together. These have been the two major conflicts that Australia has been involved in. A more robust, a more intertwined defence relationship between our two nations is good for the security of the world.
In your article, you've also mentioned that majority of the Australians have incorrect portrayal of India. And when the local mainstream media starts putting a wrong or incorrect messages, how do you being an ardent supporter of India, how can we convince the local people that they get the right information?
Well, I think it's incumbent upon me and others to speak up in favour of the relationship and to put the facts on the table. That's effectively all I was doing, was putting facts on the table and to correct the inconsistencies. One of the things that I think is a weakness in the relationship between the two countries is that I don't think we are influencing the public debate here enough in Australia about India. I think there's more we can do at an academic and at a philosophical and at a media level to inform the general Australian community about what India is today. I think many people look at India 20 or 40 years ago or have this idealised view of India which is nothing like India is today, and I think that's a very important thing we can do. I also think, conversely, in India, there are a number of other countries that have set up very strong think tanks that play a key role in terms of India's thinking about the world. Delhi, it might interest people to know, is the most crowded place on the planet for diplomats. There are more diplomats in Delhi than there are in New York for the United Nations, and there are more defence attaches in Delhi than in any other place. That shows how important India is to the future of the world, and that we are not the only nation that sees that so. In that environment, it's really important that both countries are playing a role, and that the diaspora here and that the supporters of India like myself are speaking up for that relationship into the future.
I've included a few questions from different associations and different Indian media in Australia.
Fantastic.
The first question is coming from Dr. Yadav Singh, who's the president of Federation of Indian Association in New South Wales. Julian, you're the chairperson of Parliamentary Friends of India, and you're doing a great job. Thank you very much for the opinion piece in the Australian newspaper. Would you agree that our community needs to have more active and formal interaction with your group to progress the relationship between the two great nations?
Well, hi Yadu, and thanks so much for all the leadership that you've provided in the Indian community over many, many years. Look, the Parliamentary Friendship Group is an interesting group. It's one that effectively is there, like there are parliamentary friendship groups for a whole range of other nations. I'm also the chair of the Parliamentary Friends of Canada, out of interest. The purpose of the Parliamentary Friendship Groups is really a gathering of parliamentarians in the Parliament to discuss issues pertaining to the particular country and to hear about developments and the like with a particular country. We haven't in the past done things with the community, and I think that probably is an avenue that we should be looking to do, particularly in a post-COVID world when there will be larger gatherings back in the Parliament again. So that's certainly something I'd be very keen to explore with you and other Indian communal leaders.
The second one is Raj Natarajan. He runs a Oz Indian Media, and he's got two questions. So the first one is, in spite of so many similarities between India and Australia, the two great democracies of the world, why is the trade between India and Australia only a fraction of trade between China and Australia?
That's an excellent question, Raj. And when you read the transcript from the Prime Minister's meeting back in early July, you'll see both Prime Ministers acknowledge that the economic relationship isn't what it should be. Look, I think the difference economically between India and China, there's a couple of key points to make. Firstly, China has been interested in trade. India itself is not that interested in trade. It is much more interested in foreign direct investment into India because it's trying to, under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, focus on the Made in India campaign. That's a big focus for them. I was due to travel with Prime Minister Morrison when he was going at the beginning of January, and looking at the business leaders he was taking with him, he had heard that message clearly, and people he was going to take with him were people who are focused on foreign direct investment into India. I think the other thing to note is that in Australia we recognise that India is not one homogenous country. In fact, it's probably the most diverse country on earth. And in 2017 we commissioned Peter Varghese to do the excellent Indian economic strategy. It's hard to think of another country where we've said, you know, the relationship is so important and the potential is so important there that we need a single document that really focuses, and we need a single-minded piece of work that focuses on opportunities between two countries. And of course in India, Ambassador Anil Vadva has done the companion piece with the CII. That document, the Varghese report, says effectively that we should focus on 10 sectors and 10 states. And I think when things open up again in a post-COVID world, and we should be getting ready to prepare for that even now, we need to focus on what we can do in some of those 10 sectors. Some of those sectors are things that would be well known to both countries, like the educational opportunities and some agricultural and mining services sort of industries. But there are other things that we can do, or we can share knowledge, and we can look particularly to different states. We've got to view the economic relationship as being in there for the long haul. Both countries, business people from both countries tell me that they find doing business in the other place bewildering. They find the regulatory environment difficult. Well, it's perhaps surprise Australians to hear this, but this is something that Indian business people tell me about investing in Australia, that the regulations here are uncertain. In India, Australians find the regulatory environment uncertain. What I think is missing is we need people who are able to translate that relationship at both ends. And this is a space where I think the diaspora can play such a key role in helping build that very important economic relationship.
I agree with you that the Indian investment in Australia, they're finding doing business in Australia very, very difficult.
Well, you look at the situation with Gautam Adani, and it was on again, it was off again. I have to say, I'll be partisan for a second. If we had lost the federal election, I think the Adani mine would never have gone ahead, and that would have been a massive loss for people in Queensland, and it would have been a massive loss for India as well. It would have sent a terrible signal to Indian businesses that were looking to invest in Australia. And I think it's very important for that relationship, for that key relationship, that particular project went ahead, because it said to people in India, Australia is open for business. But there's certainly more we can do to make it easier, or to at least explain some of the processes that are going on here. We should have robust processes, but we should make sure that people know what they're getting themselves in for.
Thank you very much for that. The second question by Raj Natarajan is, what role do you think Australians of Indian heritage can play in improving the trade relationship between India and Australia?
Well, I think one of the three key pillars of the Varghese report is those people-to-people links. And the diaspora here, that numbers some 700,000 people, have extraordinary links to India, and they are the bridge on which the relationship is going to be built. One of the things that always amazes me about my Indian constituents is they'll say, oh, I know this person in India, or when you go you have to see this person, or this person that I know knows that person and they work for the Prime Minister. And you sometimes think, well, can they be serious or not? But this is how India works. It's a place that has extraordinary networks, and you never know where things are going to be found. So we must take advantage of the diaspora that are here in explaining both countries to each other. It's a huge natural asset, and I think the influence of the diaspora is one of the reasons why we as a country are looking at India much more seriously, because there's a voice for India here. But we also see the importance of the diaspora in our everyday lives. And I cannot think of a diaspora in Australia that is making an impact and that is fitting in with Australia so easily and so well as the Indian diaspora. I'm so proud of the 6,500 Indian Australians in my constituency. And can I say to anybody who's watching this, if you don't live in Berowra, now's your time to move. We'd love more Indians in Berowra. I just can't have enough. So please, come on, I'd love to be your Member of Parliament too.
Thank you for that. The second question, Rajwant Singh from Punjab Express. He runs an ethnic magazine called Punjab Express. What would you count more closer to Australia, an open electoral-based democracy or closed one-party autocracy, and why?
Well, Raj, this is a very easy question to answer. It's easily the open multi-party democracy that is India as opposed to China, which is really what you're getting at here. Why is that? Why is democracy important? People think, oh, we're going to have elections every few years. In Australia, where we have compulsory voting, people sometimes find democracy a hassle. Democracy is absolutely fundamental. People have fought and died to give us the systems that we've got in our countries. But why is it fundamental to the way we conduct ourselves? It's fundamental to the way we conduct ourselves because ultimately those of us who take political responsibility, those of us who are involved in government, are ultimately responsible to the people at elections. And if people don't like what we have done, they can vote and organise to remove us. Freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to vote. These things are fundamental. In a country like China, where people don't have those freedoms, the government can get away with whatever it wants to. It is completely unaccountable. It is a small it is a small dictatorship effectively. And that means that governments, the leeways of choice that governments have are far broader in a dictatorship than they are where there is a robust democracy. And that means that in a robust democracy, people are going to want to obey the rules because that's what they do domestically and that's what they need to do internationally. That's why that relationship is so vital.
And the last question, this is coming from United Indian Association. This is a repeat, but how do you see the bilateral relationship benefit Australian, Indian and community at large?
Well, I think the bilateral relationship is going to be one of the most important relationships that we have going forward. I think people will look back in 50 years' time at this period where we are laying the foundations for the bilateral relationship and look at it in the same way that Australians look back in the 1950s to the commencement of the ANZUS Treaty. That relationship is going to be built on security. It's going to be built on economic opportunities and it's going to be built on the people-to-people links that our diaspora particularly provides us in both countries. I think it's wonderful for both countries because we are moving into a changing and very uncertain world, and in a changing and uncertain world, people whose values and whose systems are similar and who have similar interests are going to need to work together more and more. And I can't think of two countries who have needed to come together and work together more than Australia and India. The fundamentals are already there. We've just got to take the next steps, and I think under the Morrison government we are doing just that.
The last, on a lighter note, how was your trip to Delhi in December or January?
January,
told me.
yes.
And I can see Akshardham there, your photograph there. How was your trip there?
It was terrific, Rajesh. My wife and I honeymooned in India some 14, 15 years ago now, and I hadn't been back since. It's not because I hadn't wanted to go back, I just hadn't had the chance to go back. And I saw how much India had changed. Just a small thing, but I think it's something that often sits in Australians' mind. When I went there for our honeymoon, like many people do, I got sick. I love dal, and it wasn't sort of a Delhi belly thing. I had too much dal. I gorged myself, which wasn't a good thing to do. When I went last time, I was strictly vegetarian. This time, I ate with friends in restaurants and ate meat and so on. I wouldn't have dared do that 14 years ago. I think that demonstrates, on a small level, the way things have changed. When I went last time, I went as a tourist. I was getting to understand the country and the culture. This time, I was much more interested in how the Australia-India relationship is going, how much Indians think about Australia, because I think we in Australia think more and more about India. I was there in the middle of the bushfire crisis, and whether it was the chaiwala who served me my tea, or the PA the second most highly ranked official in the MEA that I saw, everybody started every meeting I had with condolences about the bushfires, with concern about the loss of life, with concern about the loss of animals as well. And that was very interesting. But I also saw that the relationship is in good hands. There's a lot of mutual respect and affection on both sides. I think we have some things to learn from some other countries. Singapore and Japan have very deep relationships. The Japanese going back further than ours does. But I think we are really well represented by our officials there at the High Commission. I think Australia is really well regarded. I think that the relationship is in a good space, and it's just going to get better. And I think we are becoming more of an influential partner in India's thinking about the world, and that's a very good thing for both countries.
Thank you, Julian, for your time. And namaste. It's a different...
Namaste.
Thank you very much.
Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Australia's first Indian magazine to have a national reach, Indus Age is the largest circulated South Asian magazine in Australia with 5 simultaneous editions, 55,000 copies printed monthly, 220,000 readers, largest network of clients, undisputed leader in community news. Indus Age is circulated in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth to over 525 outlets. Grab your copy now to get the latest on the community, news from India, Bollywood, music and much more. For more info, log on to www.indusage.com.au.